The most typical of all silhouettes in Africa is not the giraffe or the classic flat-top thorn tree. It is the tall, castle-like shape of the termite mound. The insects that build these mounds don't look very interesting. They certainly don't look like a creature that dominates much of Africa, both in terms of numbers and their effect upon the landscape. The elephant will eat only 10% of this tree it has pushed down. The rest will be devoured by termites. The amount eaten by one individual is tiny, but they exist in numbers that defy the imagination. There are over 1 million wildebeest on the Serengeti. Even when they're spread out over the plains like this, it's a figure you can never really grasp. Yet to termites, 1 million is no more than one rather small family. Termites are blind, but they create some of the world's most graceful architecture. They are no bigger than match heads, yet the homes they build weigh tens of tons and may be over 20 feet tall. The pyramids and man's other great works are pathetic in comparison. The mounds are remarkable in their own right, but also they are focal points in the bush country, and they attract a great variety of visitors. Creatures like the aardvark and the aardwolf, and a whole alphabet of strange and specialized animals who come to the mound and call it home. This is the story of those mounds, of the extraordinary insect society that builds them, and the unlikely collection of creatures that use them as a source of food and shelter. This is the story of those incredible castles of clay. Deep inside the fortress, living in almost total darkness, is a complex society of several million insects. Termites are often called white ants, but they are not ants at all. Their nearest relatives are, in fact, cockroaches, and they have been on this earth for at least 100 million years. The nest is a series of chambers of varying size and purpose, supported by graceful columns and connected by sweeping walkways and tunnels. Their architecture is freeform and based on the arch, with none of the repetitive honeycomb patterns produced by other insect builders, such as bees and wasps. The society is based on a strict division of labor, and each individual plays a clearly defined role in the life of the nest. About 2% of the population are soldiers, equipped with massive heads and powerful jaws. They come in 2 sizes, major and minor, and all of them are sterile females. The workers come in 2 sizes and 2 sexes, and they too are all sterile. The minor workers perform household chores, while the majors are responsible for construction and maintenance. They are the world's greatest builders. Using their saliva as cement, they assemble grain by grain some of the most extraordinary structures in nature. Termite mounds come in a great variety of shapes, sizes, and colors. Where there is heavy rainfall, they deflect it with their own umbrellas. Where it is oven hot, they carry off the heat through tall chimneys. In between those 2 extreme forms, depending upon the climate, the soil, and the species doing the building, it seems that almost anything goes. Scaled up to human dimensions, a 20-foot termite mound will be 2.5 miles high, 10 times the height of our tallest skyscraper. Even an average mound will be many times the size and weight of the pyramids. The classic mounds are the 10-foot high castles found on the savannah, and it is these Gothic towers that we are going to take a closer look at. The heart of a termite colony is a cell that is built like a nuclear-age military command post. Buried a couple of feet below the center of the mound, it has massively thick walls, is suspended in space on pillars, and can be entered only through a row of tiny portholes round the rim. Easily defended, this is the nerve center of the mound, the royal cell. Permanently sealed inside it are the king and queen. Except that she has eyes, the front end of a termite queen is not so different from that of her subjects. But from the waist down, it's another story. 4 inches long and as thick as a man's thumb, she is thousands of times heavier than the workers who attend her. Beside their queen, the workers look like a ground crew handling a half-inflated airship. The king is much larger than the workers, but is still tiny alongside the queen. In fact, it takes him 15 seconds to walk from one end of his wife to the other. The queen is just an enormous egg-laying machine. Every day, and she lives for up to 15 years, she lays almost a third of her own weight in eggs, an incredible 30,000 eggs a day. As the eggs are laid, the workers collect them and carry them off, and with one arriving every few seconds, it is an endless task. Because they are sealed in, the king and queen must be fed by workers who regurgitate their own last meal. The soldiers must be fed too, because their jaws are so specialized for fighting that they are unable to feed themselves. The workers also exchange food when they meet, but there's more to it than that. The saliva of each termite contains a mixture of chemicals whose exact combination is determined by the condition of the mound and the needs of the society. The information is passed from mouth to mouth through the colony, and when the queen is fed, she receives a chemical cocktail that gives her a detailed report on the state of her nation. Like the centralized command post that she is, the queen takes in and processes all this information, and then from the other end, she exudes the chemical equivalent of a computer printout that contains all the instructions needed for the running of the mound. For instance, suppose ants attack the colony and a lot of soldiers are killed. In their meetings with each other, the termites register in a purely chemical way that they are making fewer contacts than usual with soldiers, and deep in her cell, the queen receives this information. Nobody knows whether she alters the eggs before she lays them, or whether her chemicals affect the eggs later, through the saliva of the workers who carry them. What is certain is that the next batch of eggs to hatch are mostly soldiers, so that the population is restored to its proper balance. All this mutual feeding is exploited by minute creatures called springtails that spend their lives riding on the backs of the termites. At each exchange of food, the springtail sidles forward and helps itself to a tiny share. Springtails are quite democratic. From queen to commoner is just a tiny hop. So, although she's imprisoned for life, the queen's influence reaches every one of her millions of subjects. The king has an important role too. If he's removed, the queen soon starts to lay infertile eggs. They must mate fairly frequently, but how they manage is one of the many secrets still guarded deep inside the royal cell. Above the queen's cell is a labyrinth of interconnected chambers that forms the main part of the nest. This is the nursery area, where the workers make neat stacks of new-laid eggs. The eggs take about 3 weeks to hatch, and the nursery is always packed with tiny young. Termites don't have a larval stage like most insects. What emerges from the eggs is a perfectly formed animal, no bigger than a pinhead, a delicate miniature in spun glass. The workers have a full-time job keeping the young clean and well-fed, and a hungry baby termite begs for food as appealingly as any puppy. These new generations make up almost 50% of the population. To gather food for all these mouths, the workers dig tunnels that radiate out as far as 50 yards from the mound. When they find food, such as this fallen weaver bird's nest, they come to the surface and in a few hours cover it with a shell of mud. When it has been sealed over and hidden from predators, the workers can feed in safety. The inhabitants of a large mound remove about half a ton of vegetation litter a year. But they're not just keeping Africa tidy. Particularly in the drier areas, the flow of energy will be slowed down because vegetation takes so long to decay. But the termites very quickly eat it. In turn, they themselves are eaten by a great variety of predators. As a result, the nutrients that would otherwise be locked up in the dead wood are rapidly recycled into the system, making it a richer and more varied place. Grass and wood contain a high proportion of cellulose, rich in energy, but indigestible even to a termite. So the workers chew it all up, and back inside the mound they use it to build convoluted hanging gardens that have the texture and smell of damp cork. The crop in these termite gardens is mushrooms. The mushrooms produce an enzyme that can break down the cellulose into a digestible form. A hungry termite first eats some of the garden material and then nibbles on a mushroom, thus mixing in its stomach one of the most indigestible meals in nature and the magic means of digesting it. The termites cannot live without the mushrooms, and the mushrooms only grow on the gardens created for them by the termites. It's one of the most remarkable associations in nature. The fungus gardens grow in a mass of bun-shaped cells situated above and around the nurseries. Housing and food are now taken care of. But there's another basic problem to be solved. Several million active little bodies, plus the growing process in the fungus gardens, give rise to a lot of heat, to which termites are very sensitive. So they build an air conditioning system, which takes the form of a series of chimneys running through the mound. Warm air rises through these chimneys and is replaced by cool air entering at the base of the mound. If it's a hot wind blowing, the workers go down as much as 150 feet to the water table. At the bottom of these wells, the workers fill their tiny bellies, climb back up to the nest, and spread the water on the walls, so that now the nest is cooled by evaporation. Their control over the system is very precise. By opening or closing the smaller chimneys and by varying the dampness of the walls, they keep the temperature constant to within 1 degree of a comfortable 85 degrees Fahrenheit. But there are complications. The air conditioning system provides a perfect ready-made home for an army of uninvited guests. Soon after dawn, a pack of dwarf mongooses starts to come awake. The youngsters are up first, and their play soon wakes up the adults, who come out to catch the morning sun. Before long, the termite tenement is alive with them. As much as 10 gallons of water a day evaporate from the chimneys of a big mound. well over 1 million termite bellyfuls. The chimneys are full of warm, moist air, making them a comfortable retreat for cold-blooded reptiles. The most common is the monitor lizard, who grows to over 5 feet long and often shares a mound with a family of mongooses. He would eat a mongoose if he could catch one, but in the confines of the chimney he can't move easily, so it is safe for the youngsters to investigate him. Another animal that often uses termite mounds is the jackal, who hides her pups down the chimneys. It's safer than an ordinary burrow. The mud walls of the mound are like concrete, and no predator could possibly dig the puppies out. Having small creatures live in the air conditioning doesn't bother the termites. The insects themselves don't live in the chimneys. They're purely for ventilation. And if one happens to be blocked by a visitor, like an elephant shrew, the termites will open up another. In odd corners of the tunnels are little piles of dead insects, which sometimes move. They are the macabre camouflage of the assassin bug, who covers himself with the bodies of his victims. This half-inch creature pounces on termites and other insects in the chimneys and kills them with an injection from his sharp proboscis. He then reverses the flow, sucks his prey dry, and adds its hollow shell to the gruesome collection on his back. The dwarf mongooses are by far the most common of the mound's squatter population. They live in packs of up to 20 animals and are opportunists, feeding on almost anything they can find. One of the youngsters discovers a quail's nest, but he can't open his mouth quite wide enough to break them. And while he's trying, his larger relatives keep making off with them. Soon there's just one left, and he'll fight anyone to keep it. Inevitably, he loses it. But he keeps up the chase, and a broken egg, like half a loaf, is better than nothing at all. The monitor lizard, being cold-blooded, stays in the mound until it's well warmed up by the sun, and then it too sets out hunting. Like the mongooses, it eats anything that comes its way: insects, eggs, small mammals, or fellow reptiles. Anything that tastes edible to that ceaselessly flickering tongue. The middle of the day is rest time for the mongooses, for the adults anyway. The youngsters never seem to run out of energy. Baby mongooses are just what the spitting cobra would like to find when it comes to the mound to search for food. But the mongooses have spotted him. And now the monitor too is returning to the mound. Compare the tension and excitement of the mongooses to the grave behavior of the instinct-driven reptiles who go about mortal combat as if they were sleepwalking. The spitting cobra is well named. Its fangs are like hypodermic needles with forward-facing holes. By violently throwing its mouth open, it squeezes the venom sacs and shoots its poison for up to 6 feet. It would temporarily blind a human, but the monitor is not impressed. The lizard slides a membrane over its eyes to protect them when it is spat at, but it can't protect itself from being bitten, and although it's completely immune to the cobra's deadly venom, it doesn't particularly like it. The lizard's technique is brutally effective. It simply beats the snake insensible and then crushes the life out of it. And as soon as it's dead, it will be swallowed whole, inch by battered inch. One by one, the mongooses slide down into the chimneys and settle down for the night. It's been quite a day. Tomorrow will see the beginning of a whole new season. It's November. The bush country trembles in the heat, waiting for the gift of rain. The hollow shell of mud that was once a weaver bird's nest crumbles and is washed back into the earth. The rains bring grass and plenty of food for the termites, and for some species it's the signal for spring cleaning. They break up their old fungus gardens, bring them up to the surface and spread them out on the ground. Now the fungi are able to grow into proper mushrooms, shed their spores, and so complete their reproductive cycle. The termites, meanwhile, build new gardens and plant them with spores collected from the ripening mushrooms. It strains belief to realize that this is a seed crop deliberately planted by a colony of insects. But deep inside the mounds, the rains have triggered an even stranger event. In the nurseries, a completely new caste of termite has been created, with large, dark eyes and stubby little wing buds. They will shed their skins once more, freeing their inch-long gossamer wings, and then they'll be ready to take to the air. Outside, around the base of the mound, the workers have made a series of crescent-shaped slits, and with a massive escort of soldiers, they emerge to prepare the ground for the big event. Any strange insects they find are killed and dragged away, and the whole area around the base is cleared of grass and twigs. Just after dark, workers emerge to test the conditions. When all is well, when the ground is soft from rain and there's a gentle breeze, the message is passed inside, and the strange new termites come out into the night. And it is pure fairy tale. Within minutes, the castle that has looked derelict all year shimmers with new life and is sheathed in living silver. These new creatures are princes and princesses who, like Cinderella, have one magical night before returning to darkness and drudgery. They are called alates, the winged ones. And unlike workers or soldiers, they are fertile. This flight, synchronized with flights from other mounds in the area, is to disperse them and enable them to find a mate and start new colonies. Back at the mound, the workers tidy up, go inside, and seal up the holes. The magic is over in only about 15 minutes, and it happens only on one night in every year. For other species, it's a daytime event, and daylight reveals more of the mystery. The alates travel on the wind from 50 yards to several miles. When a female lands, she produces a chemical sex attractant which she fans into the air with flailing wings. To a passing male, even one some distance away, it's irresistible. When a pair get together, they rush off in tandem and appear to be in an unseemly haste to throw off their wings and slip into something comfortable. It looks spontaneous, impulsive, but it's simply the next step in a rigidly programmed piece of behavior. The wings have served their purpose, so get rid of them. The next priority is to find a suitable place to start a nest. When they find a site, the pair dig down about a foot and hollow out a cell where the new queen will lay her eggs. Like the wings, the eyes have now served their purpose and will be used no more. The pair will spend the rest of their lives in total darkness. 6 months later, a new society is in the making, with a couple of soldiers, a few dozen workers, and even the beginnings of a fungus garden. But for every pair that settle down and start growing mushrooms, there are tens of thousands whose nuptial flight has a very different ending. Because their bodies are packed with food reserves, alates are good eating, and this annual feast is enjoyed by all, from ants to antelope. Many are eaten as they hatch and never get to fly. Others fly but never get to land. They end up stuck to sticky grass heads or impaled on thorn trees, blown there by the wind. And everywhere there are eyes, watching. The nutrients that a few weeks ago were locked up in an old bird's nest are certainly getting around. And it's not just the smaller creatures that benefit. In many parts of Africa, termite alates are a valuable source of protein to the local people. In the Pokot tribe of northern Kenya, termite mounds are individually owned by the men and are passed on to their sons just like any other possession. Their traps are simple, but totally effective. Leafy branches are piled on one side of the mound, then covered with a couple of cow skins. Next, all the flight holes around the base of the mound are blocked, so that the alates are forced to emerge underneath the skins. The edges of the trap are sealed with earth, leaving only one exit at the front, where a smooth-sided circular pit is dug. A wild sisal leaf around the rim to prevent the alates climbing out completes the trap, and then it's just a matter of waiting. The alates emerge under the cowskin, head towards the light, and fall into the pit. A big mound will yield 4 or 5 gallons of termites. With night hatching mounds, the Pokot simply dig a hole and attract the alates to it with a burning torch. Some are eaten fresh, but the bulk of the catch is taken home. Lightly roasted in their own fat, they last for months. They contain about 40% fat and 40% protein, and taste like a mixture of bone marrow and peanut butter. When they are ready, they are tossed to winnow out the wings. These termites may be eaten, but they carry on their war with mankind by eating too. The building materials of people like the Pekot are no more than termite fodder. The Pekot raise their granaries up on stones to keep the termites out, but they will get in the end. Their very name comes from the Greek termes, the end. In the past, there have been great kingdoms in Africa with monarchs who ruled from vast palaces. But the thrones were made of wood, and the palaces were made of timber and grass, and today they are no more. Much of the history of Africa has disappeared into the belly of the termite. Another creature that feeds on alates, even more colorful than the Pekot women, is the red and yellow barbet. But whilst everything else we've seen has been eating them, the barbet appears to be taking them back into the mound. And that's just what it is doing. The barbet nests by tunneling a hole into the side of a mound, and there it rears its young. The hole is well up on the walls and doesn't interfere with the termites, so they in turn don't bother the birds. If the mound they're living in has just produced its alates, there's a plentiful supply of food right on the doorstep. But you can get just too much of a good thing. These babies are quite literally fed up with termites. The barbet is one creature that digs holes into the mound without causing any harm. But there is another animal whose tunneling is on a much more epic scale. This is the aardvark, the first word in the dictionary, the last word in anteater design. Its huge ears can pick up the sound of termites working below ground. That great snout is packed with sensitive receptors and has a hairy filter to keep out the dust. Those claws can open up the hardest of mounds, and once the termites are exposed, they'll come to a sticky end. But it's early yet, and the aardvark curls up for a little more sleep. When she does leave her burrow, she does so with a bang, leaping well clear so as to confuse any predator that might have been lying in wait. For several seconds, she pauses to listen and sniff the air for danger. Only when she's sure that the coast is clear does she relax and amble off on the hunt. We know she's a female because of that white tail, which makes it easier for her baby to follow her in the dark. She will dig up any termite she finds in their tunnels just below the surface, but she'll also pay a nightly visit to the mounds in her territory. Their digging powers are legendary in Africa. A burrowing aardvark can easily stay ahead of 2 or 3 men with picks and shovels, and it can rip open the concrete-like mounds with ease. An adult aardvark weighs about 120 pounds. That such a large animal is able to expend so much energy in getting its food gives a good indication of just how rich a diet termites are. She doesn't lick the termites up from the broken surface. That way she would take in a lot of earth. She first breaks open the tunnels and then, with plenty of puffing from that long snout, blows away the loose earth before she uses her tongue. After feeding for a while, she'll move on to a fresh mound. An aardvark seldom does any serious damage, but as it digs deep inside, the chimneys send up puffs of dust, like little smoke signals of distress. Most of the mounds in an aardvark's territory have holes dug in them, and these provide perfect homes for creatures like the porcupine, who likes to live in burrows, but whose feet are too weak to dig in hard ground. The female, for some reason, hesitates in the entrance. Her mate is impatient, but porcupines of necessity are well-behaved animals in queues. There's just no way they can be pushy. Finally, he tires of waiting, lifts her quills with his nose, gives her a little nudge, and gets her moving. Porcupine quills are no more than hairs that have evolved into this formidable covering of needle-sharp spikes. But another animal that lives in old aardvark holes has an even stranger armor. Except for its belly and the sides of its face, the scaly anteater, or pangolin, is covered with layers of hard, horny tiles. In some areas it is called the bushfish. It carries most of its weight on its hind legs, with its heavy tail acting as a balance. And in its search for ants and termites, it bumbles absent-mindedly around the bush, looking for all the world like a clockwork artichoke. When she is hunting, the cheetah often uses a termite mound as a vantage point to search for prey. But right now, she's just puzzled. The pangolin's protection was once thought to be made of the same material as tortoiseshell, or even of highly compressed hair, like rhino horn. But it's now thought to be the skin itself that has evolved into these hard, sharp scales. Wearily, the pangolin tucks in its head. It's been through all this before and knows that if it curls up and lies still for long enough, the cheetah will eventually get bored and go away. Yet another odd creature that moves into old aardvark holes is the aard wolf. And now we've come full circle, for like the aardvark, it too is specialized for feeding on termites. But this jackal-sized animal doesn't dig them up. Its legs are too frail for that. Instead, it finds them on the surface and licks them up with a broad and sticky tongue. The termites that forage on the surface are called harvesters. They cut up grass into short lengths and then drag it down into their nests below ground. The aard wolf finds them by homing in on the tiny high-frequency noises that their jaws make as they snip through the grass stems. But this is an advanced species of harvester, and because it can store food in the nest, it only needs to come to the surface occasionally and is therefore not a reliable source of food. But there is another, more primitive species that does not store its food and so has to forage on the surface every day. Instead of jaws, the soldiers of this species have snouts like little guns through which they fire a sticky fluid that smells of turpentine. The aardwolf has a completely bare muzzle that's easy to lick clean when he's been shot at. But after he's fed for a minute or two on a patch of these termites, the percentage of soldiers goes up. The turpentine flavor gets too much, and so he moves on. With almost 90% of its diet being just one species of termite, the aardwolf is one of the most specialized mammals on Earth. When the aardvark digs into a mound, it normally does only minor damage around the edge of the nest. But sometimes, if one is really hungry, it will tear the heart out of a nest and leave it shattered and exposed. Responding to the inrush of cool air, the workers come pouring out to repair the damage, and the soldiers sound their clicking alarm by beating their heads on the ground. In emergencies like this, individual termites show almost human altruism. They will risk their lives to defend and rebuild the nest. The royal cell has been broken open, and the queen is helpless and exposed. Left in the open, she will soon die. She must be rescued immediately. But at the edge of the broken nest, there is an even greater threat. A scout for an army ant column, a deadly enemy, has discovered the damage. If the termite soldier wins, the workers may have time to seal up the nest. But if the army ant wins and goes off for reinforcements, the nest will be in mortal danger. The rescue of the queen is well underway. It's difficult to believe that these creatures are blind. Guided only by chemical stimuli, they cooperate to push, pull, and lift the queen, and slowly, unbelievably, that vast body is moved towards safety. But out on the frontier, the army ant has won. Even as some workers heave the queen inside the nest, others are building a wall behind her. Termite soldiers are designed for a defensive role. If the workers could repair most of the damage, the soldiers could defend any small gaps. But there isn't time. The termites and army ants will meet in open combat. queen is dead, and an army marches in to pillage her castle. Even if 1 million of her subjects survive, there is no way they can replace her. They will continue to live their little lives, to build and grow mushrooms and feed each other, but without a queen to renew it, the life of the mound will soon flicker and die. Now, when the rains come, instead of new life, they bring erosion and decay. With no new building, the mounds become rounded, and elephants, scratching their itches like great sanding machines, wear them away still more. It will take years of wind and weather, but eventually there will be just a bare patch on the plain to mark the mound's passing. But then, one day, early in some rainy season, a pair of alates will land and shed their wings and start to dig. The whole cycle of the castles of clay is starting all over again.